Welcome to Focus Radio and Television. I'm Anthony Rayo, and this is Focus Lake County Magazine's radio program brought to you by Red Apples Media and Lake Sumter Television. You can listen to us here on the radio on WLBE My 790 AM every first and third Thursday of each month at 1:30 in the afternoon. The January issue is on stands, and you could read it now at 140 locations. It's available, distributed throughout Lake County. So pick up your copy or visit us on the web at focuslakecounty.com and watch us on Lake Sumter Television on Bright House 498, Comcast 13, and Florida Cable 4. So this month we concentrated on violence. We talked about Leesburg in the magazine and how it was named as one of the top 20 most dangerous cities in the state. But is that really the case? What does the local FBI office have to say? And what does the Leesburg Police Department, what are they doing? And Lake County as a whole, how does that fit in? Then we have an 8th grade student who found a way to honor the greatest generation, Ben McJackson, and he's produced the Veterans History Project, and we're airing it on LSTV now. It's a series that is sponsored by Parity Financial Group and goes into the greatest generation and interviews them. What did they do? What did they experience? And what are they doing now? Then, of course, Parity Financial Group is giving it forward, paying it forward with the power of gifting, and that's a special Learning Lounge episode with Greg Parity, and find out exactly what that means in January's episode of the Learning Lounge. Of course, we have the serial story, Six Hands, and that's what today's radio show is all about. We actually have two of the authors for one half, Ray Moore and Frank Stanfield. They're sitting here in studio with us, and we're going to start discussing a little bit about them, their background, and then we have Jamie Ingle and Larry Martin that are going to come in after and discuss their background and how they contributed to this story. Of course, this month in January was written by Devin Collins, actually one of our shooter editors in office, and he's also an aspiring author, and he took on the task of forwarding Michael Green's journey and bringing it to a crescendo before it ends in February. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that special event to benefit Lifestream that we're having on February 1st at 7 p.m. at the Bay Street Players Theater in Eustis. So if you want to get tickets and attend, go to eventbrite.com and use keyword Lifestream to find out more information about attending the event. And at the event, we're going to have all of our authors there to read their stories. There's a couple who can't make it, so there'll be celebrity readers, but we're going to have them there. They're going to be reading their stories and discussing a little more detail about their life and their work. So let's get to two of those authors now. That we'll start with Frank and Ray. Ray Moore, Frank Stanfield, and you probably have heard some of their names. Frank was a writer with the Sentinel, the Commercial, the Star Banner, kind of all over the place. And then Ray as well. I understand you're from England, and you've been a teacher for years and years, but now you've gotten into nonfiction and fictional writing.
Yes, I taught for 27 years in England. I taught for slightly over 10 years in Vanguard High School up in Ocala, and I retired about 3 years ago. And my wife on the first day came to me and said, look, you've been saying for years that you could write. It's about time that you got started, and so I've been writing ever since.
All right. So tell me a little bit about your writings. I understand you do a lot of educational, but you also do mystery work. And you have this detective, Reverend Lyle Thorne, who features in a lot of those stories. So tell us about him.
I've often wondered about detectives, how they came to be detectives. Well, he comes to be detective in the years of his life when he's 16. And his father is arrested for murder, and it's a murder that Lyle Thorne knows that his father would not have committed, but he has to try and vindicate his father. But detectives aren't only born. I wanted him to be trained. So in his 20s, he becomes a member of the Metropolitan Police Force. But after the Jack the Ripper investigation, which of course came up empty, he resigns and he decides that he's going to be a vicar. Unfortunately or fortunately, his reputation precedes him. And so when a woman is found at the bottom of the cliff of the village where he works, the town where he is the vicar, the local detective, who is new to the job, it's his first murder case, comes and consults him, and so it goes on for the rest of his life. So you have him as a child detective, him as a professional member of the Metropolitan Police, and then as the vicar who gets all kinds of weird and wonderful cases.
Excellent. So there's a lot of information there. It sounds like a lot of fun and different things you can learn about that character. And we can find out more about you at raymooreauthor.com.
That's right.
Perfect. Now turning to Frank, you've got kind of an illustrious career in the area, especially in journalism. You originally graduated from the University of Georgia, and then you've made your home in Central Florida now. Your wife Jackie, your 3 daughters, your grandchildren. It's, you know, you even mentioned you're a Sunday school teacher.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about your books and what you write about. I understand it's nonfiction, but one of the titles, the vampire title, is kind of a shocker in a way.
My latest book is called Vampires, Gators, and Wackos, A Newspaper Man's Life. And the vampires refers to a very famous case here, very heinous case. It's about some of the cases I've covered or directed the coverage of, but there's some funny things in there too, some silly things that people do. And I talk about journalism, about how newspapers are changing very dramatically.
Yeah, so what have you seen in the change in newspapers over the year, just in general?
Well, it's completely different. The internet's changed everything, and newspapers are suffering very badly on the bottom line. So the papers are laying people off, and it's just not the same. It's very, very sad to me.
Yeah, it's definitely different, but we're glad to have somebody like you who has that experience, and then we can benefit from reading about it and understanding the changes in the digital age now and the different ways that you can download and look and get that information. Now we can find more out about you and your books at frankstanfield.com, I understand. frankestanfield.com. Okay, we'll make sure to put that on the screen so people understand.
Thank you.
Now let's turn a little bit to the stories that you helped us writing, the Six Hands serial story in the magazine. Now, Ray, when I gave you this story, your chapter, what was it that motivated you to write the way you did about it?
Well, I obviously read the preceding chapters, and I felt that there was a danger that the story might fall into a rut, in that he goes back to the people whose lives he's wrecked, basically, because of his financial misdeeds, miscalculations, and there's only so much of that you can take. Plus, to be honest, I don't know very much about investing, all right? So I had to find out something that I do know a little bit more about, which is falling in love, because I think most of us relate to that. Also, I thought that would open up a whole new facet of his career, of his character, and make him a more complex, a more interesting individual. So I took him right back to the time that he went to a summer camp, fell in love with a girl, and then decided that going to university, it just wasn't going to work. And so, looking as he is for his pallbearers, he thinks, well, perhaps she still carries a flame for me. Perhaps there's still something there. He finds out, he hires a detective. She finds out that this woman never married, and he thinks, well, you know, perhaps. He goes down to see her, and of course, well, she can hardly remember him.
Yeah, and she's in Oklahoma, so that was kind of an interesting tactic.
Well, I think you said it would be a good idea to get him on the road. So I thought, well, let's bring him down here. Because again, the readers can associate with that. I got out my Google Maps and I saw exactly where I wanted him to go so that I could describe it that way. But that dream is shattered when she laughs and says, there were so many boys. He was just one. I mean, for him, she was the girl, but for her, he was just one of many boys. Plus, she's not particularly attractive anymore. She's not the same girl. In fact, the only thing that he recognizes is her laugh. But he learns something, and this is something I wanted to get into the story, that he's not only going to find his pallbearers by going back, he can also live his life forward. So realizing that, he gets in touch with his PA, who's been basically doing all the work recently, and says, look, you know that raise you've been bugging me about? I'm not going to give you that raise. And the PA goes, what? He says, no, but if you want to discuss a junior partnership when I come back, then we might be able to do that.
Excellent.
And the idea is that he's learned that he can get his pallbearers forwards as well as backwards.
Very interesting. Now, Frank, you took it in a similar direction as far as a lost love, and this guy was kind of getting forlorn and very lonely at this point. But now you added the spiritual tone to your story. Now, was that something personal, and why did you decide to go in that direction?
It's, my Christian faith is very personal to me. And this story, though, I think it sort of cried out for that because, after all, he's trying to reevaluate his life. He's looking for what is the meaning of life, and also the pallbearer angle. I mean, eventually he'll face his death. So what's it all about? And then he goes back and talks to this girl that he dated one time, and she was very spiritual. He was not. And he says, well, will you forgive me for the way I treated you? And all. She says, I've already done that a long time ago. Then she reaches out and hands him a copy of the Bible and says, the answers you're looking for are in here.
Yeah, and it seems to harken back to that original story, that Unbroken, the Dorothy Lewis story you wrote about, and have some of those elements of spirituality and how people can build their faith.
Yes, if people are not familiar with that story, Dorothy, that's a true story. Dorothy was went to the grocery store one night in Eustis, was carjacked, and her little girls were murdered. She was assaulted and left for dead. And something like that can destroy a person, but her faith carried her through. And it's just an amazing testimony of courage and faith.
Now, this question is going to be to both of you. As you see the story now coming to a close, you might have read some of the other chapters, which, of course, if our listeners and viewers haven't read, you can go to focuslakecounty.com and do. What would you like to see the character's conclusion be? We'll start with you, Ray.
I would like to see a character who accepts his faults and who is, to some extent, at peace with the fact that life is not perfect, human beings are not perfect, he's not perfect, but we still have to get on with it.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And hopefully our publisher, who's going to be writing that final chapter, Mark Robert Schwartz, will be able to kind of fulfill the ideas that all of the authors and the readers would like to see. Frank, your last just shortly.
I think it's about forgiveness, both giving and receiving, and I think it's about redemption and about meaning of life, purpose. Everybody has a purpose in life.
Well, thank you both for joining us, and we're going to be back with Focus Radio with Jamie Ingle and Larry Martin next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Focus Radio and today television. You might be watching us on LSTV, Comcast Channel 13, Bright House 498, or Florida Cable 4. You could also listen to us, of course, here on WLBE, my 790 AM, the first and third Thursday of each month at 1:30. Be sure to like Focus Lake County on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and visit the website so you can find out more about, obviously, the serial story Six Hands at focuslakecounty.com and pick up the magazine. Now, returning to our authors, we're going to talk more about the serial story, but we're going to start with a little bio. We've got Jamie Ingle and Larry Martin here. Thank you, too, for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, and we've got a lot to talk about. We discussed a little bit about their backgrounds, the serial story itself. And first up, I'm going to ask you, Larry, give me a little bit of background. You're actually a doctor.
Right, I retired from medicine a year ago. Came down to the villages from Ohio, but I actually went to medical school in Gainesville a long time ago. And after I retired, my wife and I moved to the villages where we live now. And I joined several writing clubs and doing a lot of writing.
All right, so you're very involved in writing. What started you off in writing originally?
Originally, I started writing medical books. I wrote several medical books and other types of nonfiction books. And then several years ago, I started into fiction, which now I'm doing mostly.
So that physician in Vegas and his kind of exploits,
Right,
I understand.
right.
Now, we can find out more about you at lakesidepress.com?
Yes.
Okay. So now, Jamie, turning to you, You've got a number of different things in the fire kindling. You're an award-winning author. You also own a Writer for Life. It's an editing and coaching service for aspiring writers. And you've written professionally for about 13 years now.
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about your background and the books that you publish.
Okay. Well, I started writing when I was 7, and I knew then that I wanted to be an author. I read Alice in Wonderland and literally realized I was not in my bedroom for a second. And I thought, that's so cool. I want to do that for people. I want to do that one day. So my first book is an anti-bullying fantasy adventure novel. I'm actually going to be out here next week for Literacy Week at Umatilla Elementary, meeting the kids and talking about the book, so I'm really excited. And that started off because my son was bullied, and we homeschooled, and we went to archery club, and the idea just came from there. So I love getting to talk to kids and sharing about that. That's my favorite thing about being an author.
Yeah, you kind of mix that concept together with your Clifton Chase and the Arrow of Light that you published back in 2012.
Yes, yes, and I have my second novel releasing on the full moon on April 22nd. It's a werewolf story, but it takes place in Viking-era Canada.
Oh, wow. So that'll be very interesting to find out the direction you go with that.
Yes.
And the more historical aspect
Correct.
of things. Now, we can find out more about you at jamieengle.com or awriterforlife.com?
Correct.
Okay, so the services and what have you, and also your books, and you also speak, like you said, at some of these schools about bullying.
Yes.
So back to you, Larry. Let's talk a little bit about Six Hands and the contribution that you put. Now, your story, you surprised him. You kind of blindsided him with this revelation that he had a slight against somebody he didn't really know about,
right,
with one of his clients. And we'll probably talk about this more at the event because we're going to all expound. But just in brief, what would you say your motivation for doing that was, and where did you want to see the character go?
Well, I want to give a specific example of how he screwed someone and he was totally unaware of it. And one of his best clients comes to see him, and Michael thinks this guy is a great client, but wasn't really sure whether he had money invested elsewhere. When he learns he has money invested elsewhere, he found the client has money invested elsewhere. He finds out why, because he had pissed off his wife, to use a vulgar term, many years ago by being so rude to her. His wife asked him something about an investment, and he just brushed her off and was totally unaware of how rude he was and how much he had made her upset. And when he learns about it, he realized this is another nail in the coffin, so to speak, of how he's so rude and mean to people. So I want to give a specific example. I mentioned the specific investment and how he, brushed her off. And so this client would refuse to be a pallbearer. In fact, he tells Michael, "Don't die anytime soon, because I'm not going to be there,
I think there was a little humor in that too, definitely. Now, Jamie, you took him down a path that he hadn't really traveled before. It had a darker feel to it, which was, I guess, continued in Devin's story for January. And he's at the bar scene. And why did you want to tell it in that way, and why did you want to put him in that setting?
Actually, it was because of Larry's chapter, because I felt like Michael had several successes until Larry's chapter, and then it was kind of like a knock off the chair. And for someone as egotistical as Michael, I felt like things come to him easily, and finding out that he had wronged a client and not even realized it, like I felt like his whole demeanor changed to, why am I doing this? This is stupid. And so I started him off, and I'm getting plowed tonight, and but it ends up turning into something that really was good for him in the end, and I won't spoil it in case people haven't read it.
No, and we can go to FocusLakeCounty.com and see all those stories still. And that was kind of an interesting way to do it, because you looked at those chapters, you understood the character development, which I'm sure Larry did too, to get a feel for how is this guy going to feel when something like that happens. Because up until that point, there had only been Arnie, I believe in one of the previous chapters, who rejected him outright. Everybody else was kind of, oh, I'm ready to, forgive you, his brother. Everybody wanted to move past it. So it's definitely a different way of looking at it. Did the bullying topic affect any of that?
Possibly self-consciously. I mean, maybe I did and not realized it, but no, I just think it's that human nature that we we expect things to be easy, and especially someone as successful as Michael, and for him to realize that this is not going to be as easy as just knocking on some doors and having people say we're good.
Yeah. Now, turning back to you, Larry, when I first emailed you or called you about this project, what did you think?
I thought it was a great opportunity. I think writers like to write, so anytime someone wants you to contribute something, I think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And I enjoy doing it.
Yeah, we're glad that you were able to contribute to it. What about you, Jamie?
I thought it sounded very challenging to have to find out what other people thought of the character, and then even if they were taking it in a direction that you wouldn't have, how do you make yours streamlined? So it was really cool. I really appreciated being a part of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenging thing. I know when Mark brought it up to me last February, my reaction was, wow, that's really neat. Now I've got to contact hundreds of authors all through Lake County and find them. The library, the Lake County library system helped a lot, you know, emailing, calling them back and forth, and I got your names and then had to research everybody.
And I think you emailed my writing club.
Yes,
Yeah.
I did that too. Yeah, all the villages writing clubs, the plantation, and yeah, a number of different genealogical societies even who were involved in writing. And that was very helpful. So I guess there's a big connection of authors throughout the county. How does that work, and do you all collaborate on projects ever? Besides this, obviously.
Well, the Villages has a number of writing clubs. Actually, I belong to 3 or 4 of them. So all my contacts are really within the Villages. I can't really speak to Lake County, which probably you can do.
Yeah, I'm from Brevard County, but I think you would agree that we all have the same goal. We all want to share our stories and impact people. And there's enough stories, and it doesn't take very long to read a book, so there's enough time that we can all be supportive of each other and actually have a greater impact by doing so.
Yeah, it's a great way to look at it, too, to get that feedback from the public, feedback from your peers, and help that develop your characters, your stories, whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction even. Now, as far as the conclusion to this story, where do you see it? I don't know where it's going. Mark has given me it, and I haven't read it. I don't really know where it's going to end up. So,
Well, I think it's going to be some type of redemption for sure. I mean, he's pointing in that direction. He's clearly changing. He clearly has better insight. Actually, before he had no insight, and now he has some insight. So I see it as a story of redemption and him coming to terms with what his past is, and probably he will get the 6 pallbearers.
We hope so, you know, because really we tried, and I know I had to take it out on a few stories. We tried not to say, oh, I'm definitely going to carry you. You know, that was a big kind of point when Mark had talked about this, was we don't want a definite answer from anyone because we want to be able to see at the end and reveal, well, how did they really think about it after he left? And once he was gone and they started to think about it, like I think about his brother and his wife in that one story. He was crippled, and the wife blamed him for that. So now he leaves, and where does it go from there? What about you, Jamie? What do you think as far as the conclusion, the finale?
I've always thought this is like a modern-day Christmas Carol. So I guess my expectation is that it'll end similar into that.
Yeah, the ghosts of Michael's past in that way. So what else are you all involved in now in the county? Or just in writing in general? Maybe we start.
Well, in the Villages, as I said, there's a number of writing clubs. I started writing children's books because there's actually a children's writing club. So my latest book is actually a nonfiction book for children. So I've written novels. Now I have the opportunity to do this, and it's great because I get feedback every week or every 2 weeks. We go and we present what we're writing. So the opportunities are endless.
Yeah, so you actually have that feedback from your audience who you're writing to see, you know, obviously kids. It's easier to talk to and easier to get that feedback by just their faces.
Got a huge number of retirees writing and publishing, so it's a good environment, it really is.
Well, that's really neat. What about you, Jamie?
Well, I just released the audiobook of Clifton Chase through Beacon Audiobooks, so I'm excited about that. And the Brevard County Sheriff's Department is partnering with me to release a stage version of the book, so I'm trying to figure out how to write a stage play now. I have a few people that are talented and do it for a living, so hopefully that'll happen soon.
Yeah, our event is kind of like that, but not really a play. So it's good, you know, it's going to be that reading, and we're going to have a chance. I guess the other 2 aren't coming back, but if you 2 want to come back to our office and practice reading and, you know, get comfortable on the camera. I know some of our other writers, one of them who's behind the camera, Stephanie Sherman, she is going to come back and practice as well and get ready. So that's going to be fun. Of course, that event is going to be on February 1st at the Eustis at the Bay Street Players Theater. And if you want tickets, visit eventbrite.com and use keyword or search Lifestream, because it's going to benefit, the proceeds for that event are going to benefit Lifestream. Now, there's also a number of other authors that I want to mention. We had Christina Benjamin, Mark Newhouse, Diane Vanetta, Devin Collins, and Stephanie Sherman, who I just mentioned before, and of course our publisher, Mark Robert Schwartz, who started the story back in March of last year. And he was kind of the man behind the concept and helped us to get to know this character in the first 2 chapters, the introduction in March and then the following chapter in April, and helped us to understand, you know, what kind of person he was and what kind of person he wanted to become, and the path of forgiveness. Now, you're going to be able to hear these authors, all of them, except for 2 that won't be there, but we're going to have some guest readers. Dr. Isaac Dees and also Leanne Conger are going to be filling in for them. So make sure to do all that. Follow us on FocusLakeCounty.com. Thank you, too, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. I'm Anthony Rayo, and this is Focus Radio Show. Don't forget to keep us in your focus.